Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Flash finale video. Oh my god, they did all the comic book things. Just careful for spoilers, we got to talk about all the Easter eggs and what it means for Season 3. It's a little bit easier to chart the path of the Flash because they stick a little bit closer to notable comic book storylines, but even though it does seem like they're doing Flashpoint in Season 3 because of that big twist at the end, that doesn't mean it'll be exactly like Flashpoint. But they said there'd be a big four-way crossover. Flashpoint was this universe-altering thing in the comics, so we can talk about that in a second. Let's do top 10 WTF, and I'll do comic book Easter eggs as we go along. The notable big comic book storylines that they did were Crisis on Infinite Earths, the final run of Zoom on The Flash, that was during the Wally West era, before Flash Rebirth, and then Flashpoint, of course. At number 10 WTF, in the aftermath from the last episode, they open with that scream. It was such a great way to open the episode. They put you inside Barry's head. They take the sound away so you only hear the music. It's almost like his ears are ringing and he can't hear anything because he's in this crazy state of shock, like his brain can't handle what just happened, drives him over the edge, and he can't bring himself to kill Zoom till another Zoom, surprise, surprise, comes along and kills that other Zoom. So number 9 WTF, we learned that Zoom has been trying to break the rules of the Speed Force. Turns out the Speed Force doesn't like to have its rules broken. He's speaking like a crazy person would speak, but you have to remember the TV show has given a consciousness to the Speed Force in a way that the comics has not. In the comics, it's an energy source. There's no intelligence behind it. On the TV show, it's a little bit more like the wormhole aliens of DS9, which does kind of make you wonder if there's evil Speed Force aliens out there somewhere. But the funeral, number 8 WTF, a lot of funerals happening in the DC universe, especially with Arrow and Laurel's death. So this is really a somber occasion. They have all these nice speeches. Joe gives a speech that sounds a lot like what's happening on Arrow right now, where people are trying to have hope in a moment of darkness. Even though they kind of took it away at the end because of what Barry did, he almost seems like he's coming to terms with it, but then he just can't handle it, runs back in time, and just completely messes everything up. So it's almost like Joe's speech was wasted on him. He's like the only member of Team Flash that isn't really processing all this. We get a nice Cisco Transformers burn just to lighten the mood a little bit. Then number 7 WTF, Zoom gives Barry the ultimatum, a race to see who's the fastest. So in the comics, if you read the Wally West era, Hunter Zolomon Zoom's whole mission was to push Wally to make him better, use tragedy as an engine to fuel Wally's evolution. But we know on the TV show that a big thing with Flash villains is trying to trick Barry into giving them what they want. So they tell him, okay, let's have this race, when really their plan is to power this giant engine that's going to destroy the multiverse. But thankfully, number 6 WTF, Team Flash is smarter than Barry, realizes that he just can't handle this and lock him up. You go into timeout, mister. I think there was even some Zoom dialogue where he's like, come to the dark side, use your anger, let it flow through you. All I could think of was Star Wars. It was so funny. This is where we get to number 5 WTF, Crisis on Infinite Earths Easter eggs. So the Magnetar looks suspiciously like the Anti-Monitor's gun during Crisis on Infinite Earths. What it was a weapon of last resort that he was going to use to destroy the last of the multiverse. The main Earth that the Justice League was from was also a fulcrum, so he destroyed that. It started to topple the rest of the multiverse. So to save everyone, Barry has to run around it at super speed to dismantle it, to basically destroy it. But in doing so, sacrifices himself. His body can't handle the energy because he's running so fast. So that's where the time remnant logic comes in. I wonder if they wanted to end on this moment first, like they knew they wanted to end on this big crisis moment, and then as a way to explain how Barry could survive it, they came up with this time remnant twist and then tried to kind of weave that in. Like, what came first? Did the time remnant idea come first, or did the crisis idea come first? I feel like the crisis thing came first, and then they tried to find some logic to make it work. It's not really a complaint, and I do feel like they did a good job this season of having internal consistency. They always change minor things from the comics, so it's not a big surprise that they tried to use some of this and make it work together. Number 4, we get the rest of the Zoom backstory. We find out that he's been to a lot of other Earths. He just happened to run into the real Jay Garrick on one of them, so he stole him, and knowing that he was Barry's father, decided to keep him around for some fun later if he wanted to. He also did the really nice thing, I was really happy the writers did this, where they spell the timeline out. So he got Speed Force powers, then said that wasn't enough, developed the Velocity 6 drug, used that to go to other dimensions, and that's when he started to have problems. His body started to degenerate, so that's where we get into the Velocity 9 storyline. So everything he was talking about happened before we met him for the first time in Season 2. Number 3, the final battle with Zoom. Time Remnant Barry is able to blow up the device in a way that's very much like his death during Crisis on Infinite Earths and gives the Time Wraiths a reason to come for Zoom as they take him away. Surprise, surprise, he looks a lot like the Black Flash of the comics with the red emblem here and the haunted face, like the skeleton look. So the actor explained that he can totally come back in the future, but I don't know necessarily that he was talking about Flashpoint reasons. This version of Zoom might not be gone for good, but there's a number of different ways they could go if they want to bring him back for a cameo. That is one of the most beautiful things about comic book logic, is that everything has been done. Any twist that you could possibly imagine, there is an explanation for it somewhere in the comics, no matter how ridiculous it is. But some of you may have seen this and recognized that this is from Ghost. This is how the villain dies during Ghost, that really old Patrick Swayze Demi Moore movie. And there was a Family Guy joke where Joe gets carried away. After the episode where they introduced the idea of time wraiths, I did wonder if that would be how they carried Zoom off, because he just kept going on and on about breaking the laws of the Speed Force. So it felt like in some way the Speed Force would act against him. Number 2, of course, the real Jay Garrick reveal is John Wesley's ship. Like we had all hoped, they made something right. The Flash originally got canceled after a season during the 90s, which, when you hear the real reason for why it got canceled, it wasn't because of low ratings. It got canceled because the executives shuffled from behind the scenes. So it makes you even more pissed. So they're just making things right. The costume that he's wearing looks a little bit like his classic 90s costume, just a little bit bulkier. He's a pretty big guy anyway. They give him the Jay Garrick hat. Oh, maybe I'll take something of his and use it for hope. But he's going back to Earth 3. What I think they're going to do, let's forget about Flashpoint for a second and changing the timeline, is they're just saying that he'll come back and visit on occasion, just in the way that Henry Allen appeared a few times this season. He was in the last couple of episodes, but he's not a regular, so he's not going to be in every single episode. It's just that now there's a real Jay Garrick out there, and he's John Wesley's ship. So that is just so perfect. It made me so happy to see that. Number 1, of course, is throwing the world into Flashpoint. If you've never read the comic book storyline or you haven't seen the animated movie, they did make an animated movie of it, but it's not quite as broad as the comic. Barry goes back in time and prevents his mother from dying, but in doing so, completely messes the timeline up. He never becomes the Flash, and people that used to be friends like the Justice League essentially fractures and winds up fighting each other, destroying the Earth in the process. It becomes this hellish nightmare, and the Reverse Flash is just laughing the whole time. Eobard Thawne is like, you did this, I didn't do this. The reason the Earth has turned into hell is because of something that you did. So I think we can all agree that Season 3 is going to look a lot like Flashpoint. Barry is going to have to fix his mistake. That is going to be the big hurdle to jump over. So if he's going to do that, that means he's going to have to go back in time, again, another time, and let his mother be murdered. Remember at the end of Season 1, where Barry goes back in time, the Reverse Flash is like, look, here's an opportunity to save your mother. But when he goes to save her, the other version of the Flash reaches out and just shakes his head. Don't do it. Don't save her. That means now that there are 3 versions of Barry in that moment. There's the one there from the first timeline that takes young Barry away, saves him while his mother's being murdered. The second version of Barry from the end of Season 1 that went back, and then the third version that we just saw. So there are 3 Barry Allens in this moment right here. And what about Eobard Thawne? Did he kill him here? Are we going to see this moment from the end of Season 1? Remember we saw Barry in prison? This is Trial of the Flash. He goes to trial in the comics because he killed Eobard Thawne to prevent him from killing Iris in the past. So that's kind of what he did with his mother. This kind of feels like it might be Trial of the Flash, so they might address that at the beginning of Season 3. When the cops show up, there's a dead body here, what's going on? So they have to follow up on that moment. But let me know in the comments, what's your favorite moment from the episode? There was a lot of heart. They had a lot of great moments. There was the kiss with Iris, I love you too. That's probably going to get trampled on next season because of what Barry did. But I will say I'll be just a little upset if they don't address different timelines on the other shows. Like if Arrow Season 5, Legends of Tomorrow, or Supergirl Season 2 don't address this at all. It'd be a really easy backdoor for a Flashpoint team-up because that was a Justice League story, and they kind of have Justice Society now because Supergirl's on the CW. So there's just a number of different directions they could go. I'm not expecting full-blown Flashpoint. Each show will have its own narrative, its own big bad, its own finale. But if the Flash is going to go back and change something this big from this big of a comic book story, then there's no way that they could completely ignore it on the other TV shows. But the cool thing is that the writers just went back to work this week, so they're already writing season 3 arcs, so we might hear some stuff about what's going on real soon. But so much awesome stuff. I feel like if you guys haven't already, you should go read Flashpoint. It's actually a pretty good story, even though DC Rebirth is dropping tomorrow. It's so funny how they're doing such a big universe-altering story on the Flash TV show, but they're also rebooting a whole bunch of DC comic book continuity. So what happened is DC Rebirth is essentially going to wipe the New 52 off the map. It's completely retconning that, and it's weaving in 80 years of comic book history. So if you have absolutely no idea what the New 52 is, you don't have to read any of it now. But effectively, it was DC Comics behind the scenes hitting a hard reset button on all of its characters and said that everything that's happened before isn't canon anymore. We're starting with brand new canon, and everybody got pissed. Sales were terrible, so now Jeff Johns, flew into the rescue in his Superman cape with his Green Lantern ring and said, I'm gonna fix this, so we have DC Rebirth. So if you ever wanted to start reading comics, now is the time to start doing it. DC Rebirth #1 drops tomorrow. But what's going to happen next is, after I post my Arrow finale video, I'll post my Flash Season 3 predictions. Just based on all this, I'll talk more about Flashpoint stuff and how the universe might be changed a little bit. And there is a new round of the giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. So much awesome comic book stuff happening this week. While you guys wait for my next video, you can click here for my Hodor Q&A from last night, and you can click here for my Flash Season 3, Supergirl Season 2 trailer video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.